what if the way you, fidget in your chair and the physical elasticity of the joints in your knees were actually caused by the exact same genetic blueprint?
Oh, wow, yeah. That is a wild thought.
Right. I mean, think about that for a second. We have all been conditioned to think of ADHD purely in terms of the brain. You think of distraction. You think of a struggle with executive functioning.
Exactly. Or just that feeling of your mind just running on a treadmill all day.
Totally.
Yeah.
But what if treating it like a brain-only issue is actually completely wrong? What if the way modern medicine has been defining this condition is missing, well, basically half the picture?
It is a massive blind spot. And honestly, the data we are looking at today completely proves it.
Yeah.
For decades, the medical consensus has firmly planted ADHD in the realm of psychology and psychiatry. But we are currently witnessing this huge paradigm shift in real time.
Which is so exciting.
It really is. The research on the table today suggests that what ADHD does to your physical body could be just as significant and just as measurable as what it does to your cognitive functions.
And that is the mission of today's deep dive. We are going to unpack this massive shift in understanding. We want to look at how ADHD is deeply, fundamentally woven into the actual physical fabric of your body.
Right.
To do that, we have a really compelling stack of sources. We are pulling from insights provided by leading researchers from the University of Sussex and King's College London.
Yeah, and anchoring all of this is a staggering study out of Sweden that tracked 4.8 million people.
Which is just an unbelievable number.
It is. The findings in that Swedish study alone are going to fundamentally change the way you look at health, neurology, and just how interconnected everything in your body truly is.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into those specific physical conditions, we kind of have to look at the central paradox of how ADHD is treated today.
Yeah, we really do.
Because we know from mounting undeniable evidence that ADHD is heavily genetic. It is highly heritable.
Absolutely.
If it runs in your family, your chances of having it are significantly higher. It is literally coded into your biology. And yet, how do we diagnose it?
You sit in a doctor's office and you fill out a behavioral questionnaire.
Right. You check boxes on a piece of paper about how often you interrupt people or how often you lose your keys.
Yeah, we have a biologically inherited condition that we measure almost exclusively by asking you how you act in social or professional settings.
It's wild when you put it like that.
It is. And this brings us to a quote from our sources that I think frames the core problem perfectly. Jessica Eccles, a researcher at the University of Sussex who studies the interactions between the mind, the body, and neurodivergent conditions, pointed this out directly.
What did she say?
She told BBC Science Focus, "We're stuck in these sort of silos between the brain and the body."
Oh, that quote really highlights how absurdly specialized modern medicine has become. I mean, it's like taking your car to a mechanic because the steering is pulling hard to the left, but the mechanic refuses to look at your tire pressure because they only treat steering wheels.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
Right. If you have a condition that is written into your genetic code, why on earth would anyone assume it just stops at the neck? Separating the brain from the body makes absolutely no sense for a systemic genetic condition.
What's fascinating here is that for Jessica Eccles, this isn't just an abstract academic theory. Her interest is deeply personal. She actually has both ADHD and a physical connective tissue condition called hypermobility.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her own lived experience perfectly illustrates the flaw of these medical silos. She exists as a walking example of how the brain and the body share the exact same biological environment.
Right.
And yet the medical field has insisted on treating them like entirely separate entities living in different zip codes.
So we have this literal brick wall in medicine. But if we're going to tear down these silos, where do we even begin? Do we start with the genetics or do we start with something more visible?
Well, to dismantle the silos, it helps us start with the physical connections that are the easiest to observe. We need to look at the bridge between the brain and the body that is driven by behavior and the nervous system.
Okay, that makes sense.
Our sources highlight insights from Jonah Kunze. She's a professor of developmental disorders and neuropsychiatry at King's College London. And she studies ADHD and its physical comorbidities.
Which are conditions that frequently occur alongside it, right?
Exactly. Conditions that show up together.
Right. And Professor Kunze points out that adults with ADHD are physically less active than those without it, and they are significantly more likely to smoke.
Yes.
Plus, when you look at a core symptom of ADHD, like impulsivity, well, that has a direct, tangible impact on how a person eats.
Yeah, if you are highly impulsive, you are much more likely to experience dysregulated eating. We have to remember what is actually happening on a neurochemical level here.
The dopamine stuff, right?
Exactly. In an ADHD brain, there is often a deficit or rapid clearing of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter responsible for reward and motivation. So the brain is basically constantly starved for stimulation.
Right, so you aren't necessarily planning out a balanced meal. Your brain is demanding an immediate dopamine hit.
Exactly. And a highly processed, sugary, or carbohydrate-dense foods provide that instantly.
Which means this specific combination of factors, less physical activity, higher rates of smoking, and impulsive dopamine-seeking eating habits naturally contributes to much higher risks for severe physical conditions.
Like obesity and heart disease.
Exactly. But here's where it gets really interesting, and I actually want to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Isn't this just a behavioral domino effect? Like, I have to ask, is ADHD actually causing the heart disease? Or is it simply that ADHD causes impulsivity, which causes dopamine-seeking eating habits and a lack of exercise, which then causes the heart disease?
That is a very fair question.
Because, I mean, are we just looking at a chain reaction of lifestyle choices rather than a true biological link?
No, that is a crucial distinction to make. Obesity and heart disease, in this specific context, are what we call lifestyle-influenced conditions. The ADHD itself isn't directly attacking the cardiovascular system.
Right.
It is creating the behavioral environment where heart disease is far more likely to develop. So yes, it is a domino effect.
Okay.
However, Professor Kunze co-authored a 2022 paper looking at whether treating ADHD with medication could actually influence those other aspects of physical health.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the hypothesis is that if you treat the neurodevelopmental route, if you stabilize that dopamine craving with medication, do the physical comorbidities improve?
Which implies that managing the brain's chemistry could literally heal the body's physical ailments over time.
Exactly. But the sources don't stop at lifestyle conditions, though. This is where we really move past the domino effect. We also see substantially higher rates of neurologic-based physical conditions linked to ADHD.
What kind of conditions?
We're talking about sleep disorders, severe migraines, and even epilepsy.
Wait, let's pause on epilepsy for a second. Because you cannot lifestyle choice your way into epilepsy.
No, you absolutely cannot.
You can't, like, eat too much sugar and suddenly develop a seizure disorder.
Exactly. A seizure disorder like epilepsy hints at something much deeper. It points to a hardwired physiological connection in the nervous system itself.
Right.
Because epilepsy is essentially an electrical routing issue in the brain. It's a misfiring of signals. So if ADHD is also fundamentally a neurological routing issue, it tells us that the wiring of the brain and the entire nervous system in someone with ADHD is operating on a totally different frequency.
Okay, so if the nervous system is showing these hardwired links, how deep does this actually go? Did any of the researchers look beyond the nervous system to the rest of the body's organs and systems?
They did, and it sets the stage for the most massive piece of data in our sources. We are looking at a 2021 Swedish mega-study.
And when we say massive, we mean they evaluated over 4.8 million participants.
It's mind-boggling.
4.8 million people. That is basically the entire population of a country like New Zealand or Ireland. And they're all being evaluated to see if this brain-body connection holds up at a population level.
And the researchers didn't just look at one or two physical ailments. They evaluated 35 different distinct physical conditions across this massive population.
Right.
They really wanted to see if people diagnosed with ADHD were more likely to also be diagnosed with these physical conditions compared to the general population.
And out of the 35 physical conditions they tracked, 34 of them were diagnosed more frequently in people with ADHD than those without.
It's incredible.
34 out of 35. That is an overwhelming statistical tidal wave. You simply cannot look at that data and still believe ADHD is just about not paying attention during a boring meeting.
No, you can't. It forces a total reevaluation of the disorder. And what is even more revealing is where they found the strongest associations.
Which was where?
Well, the highest correlations weren't just in nervous system disorders, which we might expect based on the epilepsy and migraine data. The strongest links were found in the nervous system and the respiratory system.
The respiratory system.
Yes. We are talking about significantly higher rates of conditions like asthma and sleep apnea.
So what does this all mean? Why would a disorder that we currently diagnose by asking someone if they interrupt people have a mathematically undeniable association with their lungs?
It sounds crazy, right?
It really does. How does a behavioral questionnaire connect to your respiratory system?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it just shows us the profound limits of our current medical understanding. The researchers themselves acknowledge that they do not have the definitive why just yet.
Okay.
But there are fascinating hypotheses. Some scientists believe we might be looking at a shared genetic mutation that affects the early embryonic development of both the brain and the autonomic nervous system.
Oh, and that's the system that controls breathing and heart rate, right?
Exactly, the internal organs. And another theory is chronic systemic inflammation. If the body is in a constant state of low-grade inflammation, it could manifest as asthma in the lungs and then as neurotransmitter disruption in the brain.
Which means your behavioral health and your physical health aren't just like roommates in the same body. They share the exact same biological foundation.
Yes. The underlying mechanisms are definitely still being mapped out. But the sheer statistical weight of this Swedish mega-study does something very important. It removes all doubt.
Right.
The exact cellular pathway might still be a mystery, but the reality of the connection is now an established fact. ADHD is undeniably a systemic, full-body condition.
To really drive home just how radically physical this can be, we need to move from those broad population statistics to the specific lived reality of the patients. We have to talk about the most unexpected link in our research.
Yes, let's go back to Jessica Eccles at the University of Sussex. We mentioned earlier that she has both ADHD and hypermobility.
Right.
For context, hypermobility is a condition where joints easily move beyond the normal range expected for that particular joint. It is a category within something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or EDS.
Okay.
And EDS is a genetic disorder that affects connective tissue.
And for those of us who aren't doctors, connective tissue is essentially the scaffolding of the body, right? It is the collagen and the glue that holds your skin, your joints, and your organs in place.
Exactly, it's the scaffolding. And a 2016 study found that patients with hypermobility are 6 times more likely to have ADHD.
6 times?
6 times. And the sources note that this physical link isn't just limited to EDS either. The broader correlation between hypermobile joints and this neurodevelopmental disorder is incredibly robust.
I really want you listening to think about how wild that is. You have a condition defined by inattention and impulsivity, and it is heavily correlated with how stretchy the collagen in your body is.
It's bizarre to think about.
Your joints and your attention span are mathematically linked. I mean, this is as mind-bending as finding out that being left-handed makes you 6 times more likely to have double-jointed thumbs.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it.
They look like totally different traits, but they share the exact same root cause.
This raises an important question, though. How does a purely physical trait, like the elasticity of your connective tissue, intersect with a neurodevelopmental condition?
Right.
What is the biological bridge between a hypermobile knee and an executive function deficit?
That is the million-dollar question. If connective tissue is the scaffolding, how does loose scaffolding affect the brain?
Well, one of the leading hypotheses comes down to a concept called proprioception.
Proprioception.
Yes. Proprioception is your brain's ability to know where your body is in space. When your connective tissue is firm and doing its job, your brain gets clear, constant signals from your joints.
Yeah.
But if you have hypermobility, that scaffolding is loose. The joints are constantly shifting slightly out of place.
So the brain isn't getting a clear signal.
Exactly. The brain receives chaotic sensory feedback. To compensate for that, a hypermobile person's brain has to work overtime, consciously and subconsciously, just to stabilize the body, hold their posture, and figure out where their limbs are.
Wow.
Yeah, and that requires a massive amount of neurological energy. If your brain is constantly burning fuel just to keep your physical joints aligned, it drains the tank for executive function, focus, and emotional regulation.
Oh, man. That makes so much sense. It takes this abstract statistic being 6 times more likely to have both and really grounds it in human empathy.
It does.
Just imagine the sheer exhaustion of navigating a day where your physical scaffolding is loose and your brain is constantly trying to correct it, all while society's just telling you to, try harder to focus on your spreadsheet.
It completely bridges the gap between the physical and the cognitive. It is the ultimate proof that the medical silos we talked about at the beginning are just artificial.
Yeah.
We don't have the full genetic pathway mapped out yet that says this exact gene causes flexible collagen and also alters dopamine receptors. But the lived reality of these patients, backed by the data, completely shatters the illusion that the mind and the body operate independently.
Right. You cannot effectively treat one without acknowledging the toll it takes on the other.
Exactly.
So if you have ADHD, or if someone you love, someone you work with, or your child has it, this deep dive completely changes the perspective on what they are experiencing. This is not a character flaw. It is a complex, systemic reality that spans the entire human body.
It is deeply woven into their physical fabric. I mean, from the dopamine-driven lifestyle-induced risks of heart disease to the hardwired electrical links with epilepsy and sleep disorders,
Yeah.
from the statistically undeniable respiratory connections like asthma, all the way to the literal collagen in their joints with hypermobility.
It changes everything about how we should approach wellness and compassion.
It really does. And it leaves us with a fascinating possibility for the future of medicine. If ADHD has such strong, statistically proven physical markers like hypermobility or specific respiratory patterns, it fundamentally shifts how we might approach it proactively.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. Could the future involve diagnosing ADHD in young children not by waiting for them to struggle in a classroom, but by evaluating their physical traits? Could a pediatrician notice loose connective tissue and a specific autonomic respiratory pattern in a toddler and diagnose a systemic neurodevelopmental condition years before that child ever has to struggle through a behavioral questionnaire?
Diagnosing the brain by reading the body. That is a brilliant thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey today. Keep questioning the world around you. Keep looking for those hidden connections, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. Take care.
Goodbye, everyone. Keep exploring.